Thank you very much, guys. Very happy to be here, although apparently for quite a few people it's still relatively early. But we are going to make this a very interesting and engaging session, as though I know for sure. Um, before we start into the whole session, it would be great if everybody just introduce themselves first, because there were some little changes in the end. So it would be good that we know who's here and a little bit brief background of what you guys are doing. Okay, Lena.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. This is Leah Wang. I'm the co-founder of ForexTC. We are a fintech consulting firm helping brokers to do the setup and management of all the technical related systems. Glad to be here today.
Good morning. My name is Zelina Pedersen. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of Yours. Absolutely thrilled to be here. And for those who have woken up this early for us, thank you for coming. We are the fastest trade execution and connectivity provider on the market. So ultimately, we help brokers and asset managers to connect to their liquidity, do order routing, execute the trades effectively. On the regulatory side of things, of course, we're the central point for all the data that's been stored and processed. So that's what we do.
Hello, guys. Good morning. Thanks for coming. My name is Or Gold. I'm representing Panda Trading Systems. Panda basically is a company that develops solutions for broker. Our solution set is filled with CRM, IB, portals, compliance systems, application, web trader, etc., etc. And part of that, I'm the only man who accepted to be this early speaking about compliance in the panel.
Yeah, I know. But we're going to make everybody very compliant, I would say. Anyway, so having said that, I actually wanted to start with, getting some hands in the air of, who's doing what in the audience. But I think I will leave that for now. Because
I can see some
I'm
people
already
being
very glad
terrified.
that you guys are here. But anyway, so let's just dive in it. The next 40 minutes or more or less, we'll talk about, how we can actually balance innovation and regulation within the fintechs and the brokerage firms here in APAC and maybe even beyond, because we have actually quite an interesting panel that can discuss about that as well. So my whole thing is there are a couple of thought processes there, right? I mean, at the end of the day, one hand, and when we do see solution providers that come to us to help, ask us to help with their scaling business, we always ask, well, two things. One is, what is your innovation, and is it really solving a problem? And the other thing is pretty much like, is it legally possible? Is it compliant with the rules and regulations of a certain country or a vertical? And so therefore, is it scalable in a certain way, right? And a lot of times, to be fair, a lot of companies have not really thought through that, at least not in the early stage. And I think one of the topics that we really want to start with and peel the onion is pretty much like, what are the challenges, the key challenges for brokerage firms and for fintechs within APAC with regard to, getting regulation and innovation right? And what are the key challenges in doing that? And or I would like to start with you.
Thank you. Okay, basically, when we're speaking about innovation and regulation, I'm looking at it as a circus. When a guy is walking on a rope, a tightrope, and the tightrope is the innovation, there is a safety net that calls the regulation. Now, obviously, innovation needs to come first. I don't think that regulation would come first, because regulation is the box and innovation is thinking outside the box. You cannot regulate what you don't know and it's new. So obviously, when you are developing new stuff, and especially, I'm coming from the technology part. We are a company that's developing technology and new stuff. you don't know always what are the regulations, and especially in APAC, for instance, the regulation is not so clear and changing from region to region every month. It's very hard to predict before you are starting the process how you are going to finish it. So first, what we're doing is we are thinking about the innovation, we're thinking about the product. Obviously, we have the guidelines of the risk and the compliance that sit in our head all the time. So we know that the product cannot work with high leverage, for instance, and we know that the product cannot work with bonuses and the stuff that the regulation requires. But a part of those basic guidelines that we have in our head, obviously there might be processes and things that we will encounter only once we will finish developing.
Yeah.
Elena?
Yes, thank you. I completely agree with you in regards to innovation versus regulation. Regulation by its nature is reactive. You can't regulate something until it exists. And once it exists, then of course you need to create a certain framework to regulate that. And I believe that very often we are falling behind as to what is being regulated and how it's being regulated. Again, if we look at innovation, there are two sides of it. It can be technological innovation, and I would probably be focusing on, but it can also be an innovation of a business concept, and we see that quite a lot of times, especially in our industry, when we look at the innovation of a business concept. We could see something like, I don't know, prop trading, right? So the challenges, and in a way, it's only been done to get outside of the regulatory framework, right? So in that sense, do we see this as innovation? Is that innovation ethical? And I think that's another thing that we should look at when we look at innovation in general. Because even if we look at simple things such as best execution or trade condition or the technology which supports many aspects of the trading infrastructure, not all of us are ethical, if you think of it. And sometimes you can be given tools that can be completely ethical, but how they're used by the end users, that's again another matter. So in my opinion, the main challenges are, of course, that the regulators have to be reactive. The ethical part of innovating versus regulating, and the ability to create those frameworks, because very often there is not enough knowledge, and by the time it's impactful, that's when the regulator has to react, but it's already impactful, and that's when they get the knowledge. So it can be quite challenging, in my opinion.
So sorry, you said the regulator needs to be reactive?
A regulator is reactive by its nature,
Yeah.
by default. And the fact that usually the regulator will find out of a certain concept when it's already impactful, such as
Yeah,
prop
definitely.
trading, and it's still unregulated. And I think the first framework is to arrive perhaps next year, and it's already unfolded in many ways. So it's just not possible for the regulator to be ahead of the game.
Yep. Fully agree.
Actually, I want to add on it, like the prop was
Already
here.
a good discussion here.
The prop was here. The regulator could enforce it, but they came to their attention only when the wave came. So only with people started complaining, and only when there was a big money and a big risk, then they thought about putting an eye. Okay, maybe we will now regulate this prop firm because people can risk themselves there. So this is basically why regulators are reactive.
And that's an ethical
Exactly.
part of the problem, right?
Yeah.
So if you do it prudently, and if you are doing something not to harm
Yeah.
your end user, then the regulators are not reactive because there is no reason to react.
Leah, well, floor is yours now, eh?
Right. No, as I can see that there are more people coming. So before we dive actually deep into the challenges for the regulation for fintech companies in APAC region, I think it's important to make it clear who are the fintech companies we're talking about, right? Because most of the time when we're talking about regulations, there people will by default thinking about probably it's money related. For example, the payment providers or the crypto wallet, etc. etc. However, there's a much larger range of the fintech can be regulated because we're talking about, for example, the data processors or the storage, for example, the trading platforms, or even some of the CRMs, if they store the data, and hosting providers who store the data. And on top of that, there are also other kind of fintech that you might not think about. For example, the news generator, because that can be like people collect the news to help them to make decisions for trading, right? But if the news is not filtered or it's not correct, so the information they got are manipulated, right? So in this case, news and some AI-driven advisors, EAs, trading robot, etc., they also fall under this category of the regulation for fintech. So knowing this, now if we're thinking about the challenges for the fintech regulation, the challenges, I would say APAC is really a quite unique region for me because it's a combination of the emerging market like Southeast Asia and the mature market like Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, etc. So between the different countries, I would say the infrastructure is very different. We're talking about the economic infrastructure and their technological infrastructure. So the people, the access to the data, the information, what they can search online or what they can get from the local providers is quite different compared to the mature market. And also the economic infrastructure I was talking about, for example, the how we can get the KYC documents, the bank statement, etc. They're all different, and the fund safety, even the privacy concept, it's totally different than the mature market. So I would say this is one of the big challenges.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head here because we're looking at the countries where the activity can be banned.
Yeah.
We're looking at something like Lublin,
Yeah.
and then we're looking at Australia, which is pretty much the smaller sister of the FCA UK. So
the
it's
Pope. The Pope.
Together with
Australia.
Singapore, I would say, but okay.
True. Yeah. So the cross-border regulation, I think, it could be one of the biggest challenges in APAC region.
Yeah, that's and you're rightfully saying this because this was my next question, and we're already more or less answering that. But this is a very interesting one because you said a couple of things that are really resonating with me a lot. So one of the things is Asia is really an unique footprint, I would say, right? Like you already said, you have the more matured countries and you have the more emerging market countries. Like you have more matured technology and you have more the emerging market technology. So there is a gap there. And then the question is, especially because if you want to scale and you want to cross-border do deals and businesses, how are you going to about this, all those different and cultures and regulations, and actually also the cultural differences in a way is also super important here. And you just also mentioned something about, data, fake data, maybe unsecured data, secured data, all kinds of data. And let's face it. I mean, we have had the financial crisis, we have had 9/11, and we have recently got also the what's it the other crisis, but because we worked all online, right? Remote. So that means from a data perspective, we're even more and more relying on it. But at the same time, we don't know what we're relying upon. So that question, that marks the question of, how can we overcome that regulatory burden in the sense of in APAC with regard to all those things that I just mentioned, and actually you as well. I see Elena really
no,
would like
I just
to,
wanted to address
chip in.
something. No, thank you very much. I think it's a very, very interesting subject, and I think Leah has slightly addressed it already. We say technology being regulated. Well, as such, technology is not being regulated. What happens is that the service provider, the end firm, broker, asset manager, whoever, is being regulated. Now, they are they have a certain set of parameters or a certain set of responsibilities that they need to comply with. And then they would rely on technology providers such as trade execution platforms to be compliant with those requirements. But unfortunately, at least I see it very often that the technology firms are unaware of what they should be compliant with. And so it's different in your bus because all of us, I'd say 95% of people who work for your bus, we've all ran financial firms before. So we understand what best execution is. But very often, or please correct me if I'm wrong, you will get a broker requesting something that is it's illegal to do that,
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
And you say, look, no, the best execution rules are as follows. Of course, they can be outside of that regulatory framework, and it's one thing if it's FCA, and you need to make sure that you report that on daily basis. And again, talking about the flow of data, but it's actually sad that there are also companies out there, that there are technological companies out there who don't understand the concept of like what is asymmetric slippage and how it should work and why you shouldn't be offering it to certain it's just very, very sad that those companies promote it and actively promote it as a tool or a feature that should be offered by brokers to their clients, which in fact in any more or less stable regulatory framework, it's frowned upon.
Or did you want to add to that because you were already alluding?
I wanted to add on the regulation of the technology companies. So yes, you're definitely correct. Our regulation is coming. We don't have requirements, but our regulation is coming from the client. So if I'm getting a new client, I will give an example. 3 years ago or 4 years ago, when we decided to enter APAC seriously, we came across a lot of strange requirements. Okay, we cut the deal, we closed it, the contract was signed, everything was great. Then we went to delivery, and suddenly we understand that our whole infrastructure or server cannot work according to the Malaysian regulation, for instance, Labuan, because they require that the data warehouse will be in the office, the iron. The iron itself will be in the office of the broker, which is not happening in the rest of the world. In the rest of the world, if you're working in Europe, I can bring you on AWS, even in Singapore. I don't care.
Well, it can be that it has to be in the country, but not in the physical office.
So we didn't know it before, but we knew it after. So we adjusted ourselves and the product according to it. And every time we're getting new requirements from the clients that we are adjusting the products accordingly to work with the regulation of the clients. And hopefully we're doing it good. So
No, and then you're bringing again a good point that how are you going to solve that problem, right? Because that is the next question I had. Like if regulation is more or less stifling your innovation, because that's what's happening, because you already have a product, you think I can roll it out globally or in the region or in a different country. You don't really know about that regulation. How should you? Because you are actually not in that country, right? And laws and regulations are not harmonized in that way, unfortunately, yet. So they are different. So how are you going to go about it? I think you already said it a little bit. But maybe, Elena, do you want to? Because you have also a product. So
I think it just really depends how flexible your solution is and what's your architecture. Now, in general, our architecture is quite flexible. The data warehouse, we collect all the data. We never miss any data. So we always strive to be. So obviously, as Elia has mentioned, like there is FCA UK, for example, and you need to be compliant with that. And then the rest is more how easily you can adjust to, let's say, other less strict regulators, right? And what you can allow. But in terms of data, yes, there is data security for every client, right? Because you already have it as a benchmark. And because different regulators have different reporting requirements, it's also very easy to adjust it when and how you want to report it. Do you push it to a SFTP server, or like what are the requirements? So it's inbuilt in the DNA of the system. But at the same time, I feel that we have a responsibility as a company to make sure that abusive strategies are not used towards the end users, to make sure that we can all continue doing our business.
True.
And Leah is nodding, so she has something to.
Very agreeing. Yes, because what Elena mentioned just reminded me of something. Because let's say here is the law, right? Let's say it's the strictest and nobody should touch it. And then here is the regulation, which is you're gonna, if you touch it, then you're gonna be punished, but maybe not as strict as the laws. And then above it, there's also the ethical level. So we know that for regulation, etc., it's always like lag back, one step behind what the actual practice it is. However, then what can prevent people or the industry go to the bottom level, which go to the touch the law, is also we have the boundary of the ethical level of self-control, etc. Because this is actually remind me of a few years ago. I think back in 2014 or something. There in our industry, in the financial trading industry, there are a lot of like participants from our industry that they formed a code of conduct, which is purely like initiated by themselves, which the companies, the participants from the LP side, from the fintech, bridge technology provider, and CRM, etc. They have this code of conduct saying, okay, we stand our ground, that we guarantee we always following these best execution rules and not manipulating any market data, and we always make sure we provide is the most ethical things, not to go against the traders, etc. So I think this is a very good behavior. Before the regulation catch up, so we still have at least the good people in the industry, I would say, to hold our ground. Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that the broker needs to lose on revenue, so to say.
Yeah.
It's more of how you respond to the need. So, for example, if we look at best execution, right, we've just developed an amazing tool, and we are lucky. So, well, I can say that we are lucky to have customers that when they need something, they request it in the most ethical way. They say, okay, this is the need. This is what we're dealing with. You know, this is a sharp flow. How do I address it? And we always find a solution. So instead of, and it forces us to innovate in a way. So instead of going like, oh, just, sleep them, delay them, abuse them, we go, okay, let's actually look at the market conditions. Let's look when the market is challenging, what can you do? So we created, for example, dynamic profiles that based on the trigger changes the pricing, but it doesn't abuse the client, so to say. So it's all about how you respond to those questions. And again, giving another example, I was just thinking of back in the day when I was running a brokerage of 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Let's look at KYC. Like, we had a requirement under MiFID to actually do a face-to-face identification of a client. So we had to send a courier to go to their house and actually say, yes, Mona is Mona. This is her passport. I've seen the passport and I signed it up. And then different KYC companies arrived and said, look, this is how we can innovate. We can tap into those databases. And it became so much easier and so much faster to open an account for the client. Back in the day, 15 years ago, it took us a week.
Oh, much longer in a lot of
And that
cases.
was a good, and that was a, like, it was a,
It's not only that, it's also the part of the scale. So let's say the same thing. 10 years ago, back office manager, doing also compliance in the night shift, looking on documents. Today, they don't need me in my past hat because there is a software that is doing the same thing. Not only that, if the company is growing and suddenly there is huge amount of sales and huge amount of new FTDs, for instance, you don't need to hire more people and trade them. The software is scalable. It's only servers.
and damn, it's cheap.
Exactly.
Because imagine
Yeah.
all the people
Yeah.
you needed to hire to just go through
Yeah.
those actually go. literally for us, it was such a massive cost to go and
It's,
travel
it's
across the
exhausting.
country.
It's exhausting. Going over passports, see that the corners are right, see that there are colors, see that the signature. It's a process that is exhausting. It's and good. God bless AI.
Well, and God bless the world, I would say. But anyway,
God bless the KYC companies.
but is it really that I mean, is it really that positive already? I mean, I know, for instance, in a couple of Asian countries here, I mean, you come up with really great examples about KYC and face to face identification, verification, and stuff like that. But is it the case that the companies already know and think that way, in the sense of, actually, I don't need two more compliance officers, but actually can just use this tool? I mean, do you have that from your experience? Of course, I understand you have it from your business experience, because you have a product, so you want to say this is much better than the two compliance people, right? But from, if you look into APAC, or if you look into certain countries like Indonesia, like I'm just saying
No, look,
something here.
I
Just, I really
understand.
would like to have that kind of. And I think Leah is nodding again, so I know for sure she can,
Oh, Leah.
True.
light some light.
Yes, this is actually what I wanted to mention, because besides all the merrier part of the automation and tools coming in, but in APAC, as I mentioned at the very beginning, here we have a lot of like emerging market. Infrastructure is not to that level yet. I had a lot of experience back then. My broker clients, they are specialized in the APAC region, and when they, so let's say for the mature market, most of the time, maybe for each client, when they deposit is like 10,000 USD, etc., and every month they deposit quite often. However, in Southeast Asia countries, there are a lot of micro accounts. The account deposit $1 or $5 each time, and
Like a cent accounts, yeah.
yes, and maybe through the months they just deposit once or twice. So in this case, if we're still using those like automated KYC tools, etc., first of all, maybe they don't even have a utility bill. Maybe there are like 8 people living in the same under the same apartment. There's only one utility bill, so they can't provide that. And also, the Visa, Mastercard, or credit card is not so widely used as compared to Europe or Australia, for example. You can't provide those bank statements with your name and address on. So how can they use this kind of technology, right? On top of that, another thing is really funny is, also, nowadays for the Regtech, some of them, they charge a KYC cost, like per account, per transaction, they cost 20 to 30 USD cents, right? But for those accounts, like they deposit $1 each time, but they were being charged like 20 to 30%. That's 30% of the whole cost. It doesn't make any sense.
But aren't we going back to the ethical question? So, this reminds me of something. I was speaking to one of a good friends of mine, and he was saying, Elena, you can't imagine what happens in Southeast Asia. There are people literally going on driving a car or a bus, and they go to a small village, they have a scanner, they open an account on a laptop for someone, help them install the mobile app, and take the deposit of a couple of dollars. Now, let's ask ourselves, is this an appropriate product for the people who can afford a couple of dollars? Like, should they be doing this?
Exactly. So localization and adaptation of the technology need to be considered, because otherwise this behavior is really forcing the people to take some like fraudulent kind of actions, right? This is against the purpose of the regulation.
What I suggested, we had a client that wanted to gamify these products for the Asian market as well, because he had those $1, $5, $10 clients. Now, I told them that, in my opinion, and I'm not a legal advisor, but in my opinion, those clients do not fall under forex traders. Okay, the clients who are $1, $5, $10, you cannot expect them to make a living or make a wealth out of this money. They are here to because they have the passion and the excitement to see the prices going up and down. Those one needs to go under a gambling license, not under a
Yeah,
forex
let's
license.
speak about the client classification and being a professional client to be able to offer a certain leverage. I mean, it's just it's so outside of what we're talking about here.
But isn't that then again, and I think I heard that a little bit as well in between you guys all, isn't it a little bit about education that is maybe not on top of every country in the same way that it should be, and all, or maybe, you know, that's already happening in Europe, or that people already know more about it, about the technology, how it's working, what ethical is viable, what is responsible, and what is in a way responsible AI, for instance, right? I mean, I think, well, in Singapore we are talking quite a bit about that, because, you know, AI becomes one of the biggest features of this decennium, I would say, or even longer. I mean, it's not going to go away anymore. But you have, of course, AI, which can be used and abused. Let's put it that way. And it is in a certain way already reliable, but in a lot of ways maybe also not so reliable. But yet everybody really wants to, you know, get a piece of the cake. So then I'm more coming towards, again, where we started a little bit with that as well, like, you know, data management and the enormous data that that we know of or that we don't know of, and in the world that we live, that is all data driven. So how do you guys thrive and survive, I would say, with regard to this data, and how what kind of tools, how do you use it to actually be ahead of the curve and, you know, stand your man in this era?
Um, I will give two examples. One from.
And be short,
I
because
will
we
be
only
very
have 1
short.
minute.
I will be very short. The one example is from the broker perspective. Obviously, AI is good in recognizing patterns. Okay, if I will give him a fraudulent activity,
Machine learning is good.
whatever.
Yeah, we had that discussion before.
Yes, whatever. Those robots, they are good at patterns, okay? And because they are good at patterns, they can recognize stuff. And instead of giving a normal script or normal stuff without any artificial thinking, I can give those patterns to AI to go over. And those patterns can be, for instance, credit card risks. Those patterns could be withdrawal risk. Instead of going over right now, you know, when a client is waiting for a withdrawal, there is some process within the brokers. There is an AI that can do this process and also take the risk part and check the patterns in the trading account and see that everything is okay. There are a couple of ways. Now, on the other side, if I'm speaking as a B2B provider, when I'm speaking about AI, I can tell you that specifically on APAC, sometimes my legal team doesn't know what is the law. And if I will ask them what is the law, I can forget about the clients, because it's like it will take them 2 weeks. So I am going myself. I'm scraping the website of the regulator. I'm downloading all the files. I'm feeding some AI that I teach, and he gives me the insights that I know. Then I'm coming back to my legal team and point them. You should go here, 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 and here, and give me a brief about what I can do and what I cannot do. This is a way that AI can assist me, but obviously I cannot count on it only. It's
That's
just
not
purifying the data for me.
Okay. Quickly, Elena. 2 words, because
Yeah, I know the time is running out. I mean, data protection is such a complex matter that, all I can say is that we make sure that the data is protected and we don't share data with anyone. I guess, except that it's being used by the brokers and it's stored for 5 years and, archived. Yeah, we can, if anyone is interested in that matter, please find me. We can speak for an hour or two about how it's protected.
Leah.
Right. So, well, I personally believe in AI, and I do believe that's the future. However, I would advise people not to go overly passionate about AI, because at this moment, our AI technology is still trying just to collect the information and analyze. They don't have the ability to judge if this information is true or not. So this data can easily be manipulated. If somebody plants and feed the AI specific kind of information, they can easily misleading people and then take the benefits by their own interest. So yeah, this needs some regulation to catch up.
Okay, well, guys, we're out of time, and unfortunately, I really would have opened it to the audience to actually ask questions, but there is no time for that. But what I would say is, please look them up. Look whoever up that you would like to talk to after this talk, and ask the question, connect, because that's what this event is all about. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for getting up really early to be here. I'm very glad that we have ended with much more people than we started with. And thank you very much for my esteemed panelists.
Thank you, Mona. It was
Thank
a
you,
pleasure.
Mona.
Thank you, guys.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant moderating.